According to the National Center for Charitable Statistics, the charity industry earned $1.74 trillion in the year 2013, and they had expenses just over $1.6 trillion. Now, what if I told you that a large portion of these expenses that they had didn't go towards aid of the people that they were helping, but instead it went into the pockets of the greedy owners of certain fraudulent charities? In fact, according to a study done by CNN in partnership with the Tampa Bay Times, the authors Hundley and Taggart concluded that the 50 worst charities in America give less than 4% of their annual earnings to the cause that they claim to support. So how can they get away with giving such a small percentage of what they bring in? How can they get away with funneling that money out of the aid that they give and putting it in their own pockets? Well, in reality, it is a lack of regulation on the part of the IRS that allows them to do these things. Now, in this speech, I will discuss the lack of consistent action on the part of the IRS in regulating these charities, and I will discuss the flaw in the current system that allows businesses to get by the rules set forth by the federal government. And I'll do this by analyzing specific cases and specific businesses and how they've been handled by the government. So, as a class, we should, by the end of this speech, be willing to write to the IRS and demand more strict laws and regulations for fraudulent businesses attempting to skirt by the system. So even foreign students that are not citizens in the United States are able to write to the IRS because the IRS impacts all people living in the United States legally, and so everybody here is living in the United States legally, so it impacts everybody. But first, before we discuss anything further, we need to talk about the definition of charity in the eyes of the IRS. Now, the IRS, in case you guys didn't know, stands for the Internal Revenue Services. And they have a set of standards with which any organization that wants to gain a nonprofit status and become a legal charity has to go through. And this is headlined by something called the 501c3 tax exempt provision. Now, on the official website of the IRS, it quotes that none of a nonprofit's earnings may inure to any private shareholder or individual. And for those of you who don't know what inurement means, it means to become accustomed to. So essentially what this definition is saying is that these organizations cannot just take their earnings that they bring in and put them into private accounts with people that are associated with the organization or unassociated with the organization. And now I will take a more in-depth look at specific businesses that have been able to skirt by this by the 501c3 Act and function unethically and illegally. The first is the Children's Cancer Fund of America. Now, the two businesses that I talk about are truly awful. The people that are in charge of them are awful people. So, to start, this organization was founded in 2004 by James Reynolds in Florida. And according to America's Worst Charities, which was a list created after the report done by Hundley and Taggart, they found that this organization is the second worst in all of America. And through its operation, it received $86 million in support and gave $75.5 million to its solicitors. Along with this, during their operation, they gave 1% of their annual earnings to direct aid. Just 1%. And now, according to the Federal Trade Commission, they conducted a report earlier this year that found that the CEO himself was actually funneling, like it says is illegal to do by the IRS. It found that he is funneling money from his organization and putting it into his son's for-profit business and using that money for family vacations, is what the report said. Now, because of this, the federal government ended up shutting down the Children's Cancer Fund of America after 12 years in business. Such a shame. And now the CEO, James Reynolds, is prohibited from ever being involved in another nonprofit organization ever again. However, through this entire thing, we have to wonder, where was the IRS? And why didn't the IRS catch them earlier on? They allowed it to happen for 12 years. I'm going to discuss it further with the next example, which is the Kids Wish Network, a charity in Florida that is dedicated to helping children with severe illnesses. And for the America's Worst Charities list, they are ranked as the #1 worst. And they, although a little bit better than the Children's Cancer Fund of America, they give 3% of their annual earnings to direct aid. And in contrast to the Children's Cancer Fund of America, they are still in business currently today. And they also came out with a rebuttal to the reports found by CNN and Tampa Bay Times. And in it, the CEO, Anna Lasola, claimed that 56% of their annual earnings go towards direct aid. However, if you simply Google Kids Wish Network and go to their homepage, their official page, and scroll down just a tiny bit, it says that 100% of their annual earnings go to direct aid. So clearly, there's some sort of lying from somebody, but I have a feeling it's not the reporters in this situation. So, if the business is so bad, then why has the IRS allowed them to maintain their nonprofit status? Well, it is because it is a fractured system. And in a follow-up report done by the same people who reported on this earlier, Hunley and Taggart, done a year later, they found that the IRS grants nonprofits the 501c3 tax exemption, and from there they step back and allow the state to oversee any further penalties or anything like that. However, this is an issue because states can't follow nationwide charities across borders. So charities will face a penalty in one state, however, then they'll be able to operate in the 49 others. However, there is something that we can do about this. It is clear that the IRS is not doing enough as an organization, and in a report done by Michael J. Rosen and Carl Emerson in 2002, they said that we should ask for a federal preemption law. For those of you who don't know, a federal preemption law is a law that acts as an umbrella over all of the 50 states and has power over any state law that is in opposition to the law. For the federal preemption law that they say we should have, it should be to create a stricter standard for qualification of the 501c3 fund, so that we can catch fraudulent charities at the source. Along with this law must be made in cooperation with the states, so that the state governments and federal governments can be on the same page and work together to stop any sort of fraudulent charities from being able to progress. And also, the IRS must be held accountable in their holding accountability of charities, and they must audit charitable organizations on a quarterly basis rather than an annual one, so that they can keep a closer look at businesses that are trying to skirt the system. And so this is just one way that the IRS should be held accountable. However, as I stand here today, I urge you to take this opportunity to write to them and ask for true change, so that we can stop the corruption plaguing the charity industry. And here is the local IRS office's address, just in case anybody wanted to write it down. And so, as Napoleon once said, the world suffers a lot not because of the violence of bad people, but because of the silence of good people. I urge you to not be silent on this issue. Thank you.